next to me is one of our favorite guest presenters. In fact, he's actually the guest presenter that's joined us on our Disney Cruise Line vessels around the world more times than anybody else. I had the great pleasure of introducing him for his first show in the Buena Vista Theatre about 12 years ago. That was his first cruise. And right now we're up to cruise number?
68.
68! So it gives me great pleasure, whether you're here for the first time or whether you've heard Don's story before, you know what you're ready to hear once again, but I tell you what, it's an amazing story. So please, help me in welcoming the Senior Character Illustrator for the Walt Disney Marketing and Attractions Division, Ducky Williams!
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. For those of you that do not know me, let me do a quick introduction of myself, let you all know who I am and what I do. My name is Don Williams. I go by the nickname of Ducky. That's basically because of Donald Duck. Even though I draw all of the Disney characters, Donald is pretty much my favorite character, and I'm kind of known throughout Walt Disney World for my Donald Duck drawings. I am part of the marketing advertising division of Walt Disney World. That means anytime there's any type of advertising or mailers or brochures or tickets or guidebooks, anything like that, I'm pretty much the guy that does it. I am a one-man illustration department. So anytime you get a mailer in the mail from Walt Disney World or Cruise Line or DVC, Disney Vacation Club, or if you see an ad or a billboard in the Orlando area or one of the buses, anything like that, a lot of the signage around the Orlando area, I'm pretty much the guy that does that. A lot of people get me confused with an animator. I'm not an animator, I'm an illustrator. I always wanted to be an animator until I did it. Then I very quickly discovered I did not want to be an animator. I found it very, very tedious drawing the same character over and over. If you all know how animation works, every little movement is a separate drawing. As a matter of fact, there's 24 drawings to every second of film on the screen. So it's just drawing the same character over and over and over. And I did a little of that, and I found it very, very tedious. Plus, I like to paint too much. So, I mean, I pretty much draw to get to the point where I can paint. Okay, painting is my true love. And in addition to that, instead of animating the same character day in, day out for maybe a year, even 2 years, I get to go to work every day, and I may do Mickey today and Simba tomorrow and Cinderella the next day and Snow White the next day. So I get to work with all of the characters. And I do everything from Mickey on a 3-inch ticket to a 60-foot billboard. So it's much more rewarding for me to come up with the concept, to draw it, to paint it, and even be in on the printing. Everybody got their litho in their room? Right? Okay, yeah. And I will be available later on the cruise. You get a little ticket in your stateroom, so depending what floor or what deck you're on, I'll be happy to meet all of you and do a little signing for you. You're welcome to bring that and we'll autograph it for you. Just check your little schedule there, but I will be doing that later on in the cruise. Right now, what I'm going to do here is I am going to continue drawing as I speak, so I apologize if my back is to you, but the more of these that I do, the more we give away. Everyone got a raffle ticket, I assume. That's what we're going to do. We're going to raffle off all these scribbles that I'm doing up here, okay? Let me just go a little more into where you can see my work throughout the Walt Disney World property. Like I say, I do all the advertising art, all the mailers, all the brochures. I work not only for the theme parks, but all the resort hotels. More recent last few years, probably 80 to 90% of my work is for Disney Cruise Line, as well as Disney Vacation Club. I do all of their lithos, I do all the cruise line lithos, all of the mailers that you get, all of the advertisement, even things around the ship like Mickey putting on his little life jacket diagrams and the little booklets in your room with Grecian Mickey on the cover. So I mean, I do a lot of little things that you don't even realize have to be done are done by me. The only thing I do not typically do is merchandise. A lot of people ask me, oh, did you do that t-shirt? Did you do that? I don't typically do merchandise. That is another whole department. And they're a very large department. They have typically probably 25, 30 artists there, and they do all your merchandise, all your souvenirs, all your Mickey t-shirts and your coffee mugs and pins, all that kind of stuff. I typically don't do merchandise. Once in a great while, merchandise will come to me for a special piece that they would ask me to do. It's usually a limited edition piece, you know, the expensive stuff, okay? Basically, too, because pretty much everything done in the merchandise division is all done it's all drawn by hand, but it's all done and colorized by computer. I still do 90% of my work with a paintbrush. And lots of times merchandise, or once in a while merchandise, will want something hand-painted, and that's where I come into the picture. They'll ask me to hand paint. If you've cruised with me before, any litho that you've received, all my lithos are done in the old-fashioned, hand-painted, traditional way. Everything you see up here is all hand-painted, hand-drawn, so on and so forth, in the old traditional way. Doesn't mean I'm a dinosaur, doesn't mean I can't do the computer. I know how to do Photoshop and Illustrator and all that kind of stuff. But I just don't like it. I don't like the way the characters look when they're done by computer. I mean, your Pixar characters, Buzz and Woody and Up and all those guys, they were designed for the computer, so they look great on the computer. But if you take Cinderella and you try to put her three-dimensional on the computer, to me they look like they're made out of plastic, and I just don't do that look. Once in a while, I will do a character for a quick job, for like a ticket or a mailer or a brochure, and they want a digital file, so I'll do it on the computer, but I don't do it the typical way. I do it on the computer the same way I would do it with a paintbrush. So if I've done a piece, there's probably, I take that back, there is 2 pieces up here, 3 pieces up here that I've done on the computer, but I paint them in the very same way on the computer that I do with a paintbrush, so you really can't tell. The 3 pieces that are computerized, this one here, and this one here, the ad for the marathon. This is hand painted, but I mean I shade and render the same way in Photoshop that I do with a paintbrush. So it's very difficult to tell which is done which way. So I mean I typically paint in the traditional way. And if any of you have listened to my talk before, I have to mention my 2 favorite projects throughout my career. This is my 31st year at Walt Disney World, 31 years this year. And I'm still waiting for my 30-year trophy, my Jiminy. You get that on your anniversary, which was last November, and I'm still waiting to get it, so, but that'll come eventually, before I retire, I hope. Anyways, the 2 projects that throughout my career at Walt Disney World that are probably most meaningful to me is number 1 is Tony's Town Square Cafe. Everybody here been to Walt Disney World?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay. And a lot of people probably haven't even gone there, but when you enter the Magic Kingdom and you're looking at the castle, City Hall's over here, and over here is the Lady and the Tramp restaurant, Tony's Town Square Cafe. And a number of years ago, probably in the mid-'80s, I think that's what's done now, and Imagineering came to me and asked me to put that restaurant together, which I did. All of the paintings, all of the signage, all of the china, the menus. I pretty much put that entire restaurant together. And what a lot of people don't realize is the actual paintings are in that restaurant. Those large paintings, those are not reproductions or lithos or proofs or prints. Those are the actual real paintings behind those frames in there. I believe there was 12 of the oversized paintings that I did. If they ever change that restaurant out, I want to make sure I get those paintings back. That spaghetti scene would look very nice over my living room couch. Anyways, and the other one, of course, the other project that I'm very happy with was Mickey's house in Toontown, which is now a thing of the past. Of course, they've torn Mickey's Toontown, the house down at Mickey's Toontown, as they're doing the new revamp and expansion of Fantasyland, which will be phenomenal. And then when they tore that down, because I pretty much designed that house, drew up the furniture, even went to Home Depot and picked out the carpeting and the wallpaper and the whole thing, really put that whole house together. Imagineers had absolutely no idea what Mickey's house should look like. All you got to do is look at a bunch of Mickey Mouse cartoons and that's what it looks like. Anyways, they since have torn that down, and when they tore that down, everybody in the world wanted pieces from that house. eBay and everybody, so the Imagineering decided that they're not giving any of it out. They're destroying it all. Okay, and a lot of it was, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, a lot of it was termite ridden. So, I mean, a lot of it was not salvageable. But we had a new vice president, and I mentioned to her that, she never even realized I did that house. And I said, they're tearing it down now, and it'd be kind of nice if I could have a little souvenir of it, So she made me keep a solemn oath and not tell anybody. And she got me a piece of Mickey's house, which I have hanging in my house right now. So it was a pretty nice surprise. But anyways, how many people have been to my presentation before? Well, quite a few of you. Well, we got a lot of new folks too. So you guys, you repeaters, are going to have to bear with me. I only do one dog and pony show up here. But you're more than welcome to come as often as you like. But we do have some new folks up here, and the number one thing that cruise people like me to talk about is how I got started at Walt Disney World, and it's a pretty elaborate story. So we need to get into it right away. And like I say, as I talk, I'm going to draw, so we'll have more characters to give out at the end of the presentation. Okay? I wrote my first letter to Walt Disney when I was 10 years old. I wanted to be a Disney artist way back then, and I actually got a letter back from Walt. From him himself, which I still have, which is probably one of the prized things in my collection. And yes, I am a collector. If you walk into my house, my living room looks like the Emporium. Disney shouldn't even pay me, they should just give me stuff. Anyways, I got a letter back from Walt, and he basically said he didn't have any openings for a 10-year-old artist, but he was very encouraging, told me to keep on drawing and keep on practicing and so on and so forth. And I come from a very, very large family. There was 8 of us kids, and just my mother raising us. My father was not in the picture, so we were pretty dirt poor. And I remember when Disneyland opened in 1955, I wanted to go so bad I could taste it, but that really wasn't ever going to happen. At least not then, at least until I grew up anyways. But anyways, graduated from high school, and about the time I graduated, the military, Vietnam was at its peak, and the military was after me. So 2 weeks after graduation, I got my draft notice. I didn't have time for anything at all, but didn't really want to go in the Army, so I figured I'd join the Navy. I figured if I have to go to Vietnam, at least I'd be on a boat instead of running through a rice paddy, And so I joined the Navy, and I did 4 years in the Navy. And after I got out of the Navy, I went back home to Massachusetts. Figured I needed a job. I went downtown, and I started putting my name in just about every business there was downtown. And I landed a job right away in a bank as a teller. And did that for just a few months, and I was quickly promoted to a branch manager. So I managed the bank for almost 10 years. The whole time I was managing that bank, I was still drawing and painting the Disney characters, but for my own, just for my own pleasure and benefit. And what I used to do at Christmas time, I'd have all these nice Disney paintings, full scenes, just like this, Of course, this was before I was a Disney artist. They weren't quite as finished as, they were finished, but they weren't as good as this, okay? Because I used to think they were great, but they weren't great, okay? But they were pretty good for an amateur, okay? And what I used to do is every Christmas I used to bring in maybe a dozen of these paintings. They were all framed and everything, Disney paintings, and I'd hang them all around the bank. They looked really nice with the Christmas ornaments, Disney and Christmas. They kind of go very, very well together. And I'd bring them in. I'd get a lot of nice comments from all of my customers. They'd love to see them. And what happened one particular Christmas, the gentleman who was the anchorman of the local news station, of the local 6 o'clock news, he was a regular customer of mine, came in for years. But what I didn't know about him was he was a huge Disney collector. And he came in one Christmas time, and he came up to me. He says to me, where did you get all these Disney paintings from? They're worth a fortune. And I said, well, no, they're not. They're just paintings that I did. So what he wanted to do was a little feature on the 6 o'clock news, local banker paints Disney kind of thing. And I said, well, yeah, okay. So he came to the house one night with his film crew, And they filmed me drawing a little bit and painting a little bit. They filmed a lot of my artwork that I had around the house. And then they ran it on the 6 o'clock news. And it was very, very well received. After that, all my customers would come into the bank and they'd say, geez, you know, we saw you on the news the other night. You know, you're wasting your time. You should be working for Disney. What are you doing working for the bank? Well, that's very easy to say, but how do you go from A to B, you know? Everybody could say, oh, you should work for Disney, but how do you do it? That's the thing. How do you cross that bridge, okay? So what happened was, we used to hire off-duty policemen to be bank security guards. You know, they pick up extra money, work the bank on their day off. And one of these policemen, what he did without my knowledge, I knew all the cops, it was a small town I worked in. One of these cops, without my knowledge, he goes over to the TV station and gets a copy of the videotape that they ran on TV, because like I say, it showed a lot of my work. And without my knowledge, he writes a letter to Disney in California with this videotape, and you had to know this cop. He was your typical pot-bellied, gray-haired Irish cop with the Irish accent and everything, and really, really gruff, but the sweetest guy in the world you ever want to know. And he wrote this letter to Disney, not asking them to take a look at this guy's work or anything like that, telling them, you gotta hire this guy because he loves Disney and he draws good and here's a sample of his work, so you guys should be really hiring him. And he writes this letter and mails it off with his videotape and sends it off to Disney, and then he tells me what he did, okay? And I was pretty upset because I really wasn't ready to take that step yet. Well, the fact of the matter is I probably never would have been ready to make that step. Because I used to have this little fantasy in my head that Disney would someday sort of magically come to Massachusetts and pluck me out of my little house and bring me to California or Florida and make me a Disney artist, you know. And I used to have this fantasy, but I felt too, I think, if I ever approached Disney and failed, well then the dream was gone. So I probably never would have done it without this little push, which this guy gave me. I really owe a lot to him, okay? So anyways, he mails this videotape to Disney, tells me about it. 2 weeks later, I get the tape back from California with a nice letter from the head of their animation department saying that they were very impressed with my work. However, they had no openings at this time, but if I wanted to pursue this, I could contact a gentleman in Florida by the name of Ralph Kent. I said, okay, well, now I got a name. So I repackaged up the tape with my own letter this time, and I sent it down to Florida to this Mr. Kent to see how far I could go with this now. And the whole deal in California, from the time this cop mailed the videotape to the time we got it back, like I said, was about 2 weeks. Well, I mailed this to Ralph, and I waited 2 weeks. I waited a month, waited 2 months, I waited 3 months, almost 4 months, and I'm hearing nothing. All this time is going by, and I mailed this thing off. I'm up in Massachusetts. I'm going crazy. What's going on? Why am I hearing from him? So I pick up the phone and I dial information. I dial in all these numbers, and I finally get a number where I get connected to his secretary. And so I said to her, I said, you know, this is Don Williams, and several months ago I mailed a videotape to Ralph Kent, and I just wondered if he had received it. Oh yeah, he received it. It's sitting here on his desk. He hasn't looked at it yet. I said, well, you know, I got an opportunity to come to Florida. As long as I'm coming to Florida, do you think maybe I could meet with Mr. Kent? Well, when are you coming? And I said, well, when can I see him? And so anyway, she made me an appointment. I had absolutely no intention of going to Florida. I just kind of threw that out there. So now I got to take time off of work. I got to get all my artwork together. I got to get a flight. I got to get a hotel, all this kind of stuff. So I did. And I packaged up about 55, maybe 60 original pieces of art that I had done for of all Disney stuff, all characters and backgrounds done on cells and everything else. And I flew down to Florida and with all this, and this was it. This was the big the big deal. I'm meeting with this Mr. Kent, okay? What was very cool, back then the art department was in the tunnel at Walt Disney World. Everybody know there's a tunnel underneath the Magic Kingdom? Yeah. Well, there's a tunnel underneath the Magic Kingdom, okay? And it goes all under the park. And you can really go down or up to the park or down from the park from just about any location. The original concept of for that was they didn't want people in costumes walking through the wrong area. So in other words, if you worked in Frontierland, you could change in wardrobe down in the tunnel and go under the tunnel and come up in Frontierland. So you didn't have to come up in Adventureland and walk through Adventureland in your costume. That was one of the concepts. But anyways, the art department at that time was in the tunnel, okay? So when I met with Mr. Kent, I got to go in the tunnel. I got to go backstage behind Disney World and go down into the tunnel and see the art department, okay? And now back then, there was probably 15 or 16 artists that do what I do right now, okay? So I went and I met with Ralph, and I'll never forget that day because they brought me down into the tunnel and we went into this big empty conference room. They had this big long conference table and he had all my artwork all spread out all over this conference table. And he brought in two of his other artists to kind of look at it. Because, you know, they're doing the stuff, they got a good eye for it. So the three of them are looking over my artwork for about 20 minutes, a half an hour. They're all sitting there picking up a piece and they're looking at it like this. I mean, they're examining it with like a fine-tooth comb, giving me no expression, no indication whether they liked it, whether they hated it, whatever. And finally, the two artists leave, and Ralph says to me, he wants to see me again the next day. Well, this is a good sign. He wants to see me again. Not throwing me out yet. So I went back the next day, and what he said to me was, since I've had no formal art education, never been to college, never been to art school, he felt that I needed a little bit of polish. So what he was going to do, he was going to send me home with official Disney model sheets. Let me take a minute to tell you what model sheets are. Model sheets are, these are off a model sheet, okay? Disney has, throughout the years since day one, created basically how to draw sheets of every single character in existence. And there's a number of sheets on every character, all the way back from Steamboat Willie to Snow White to all the dwarves, all the way up to Mulan and Lilo and Stitch. Not only the major characters, but all the secondary characters, all the little Cinderella birds and everything. There's model sheets on all of these characters, how to draw sheets. So all the artists, all the animators will draw the character the same way. Whether you draw them or I draw them, you use the style guide, and it should look like this character, okay? So and they're very protected, okay? They're very hard to get hold of. So Ralph was going to give me model sheets on all of the characters. He was going to send me home with the official Disney model sheets, and he assigned me to one of his artists, an artist by the name of Russell Schroeder. Russell was kind of their top guy at the time, and what I was to do was to go home and practice the characters from these model sheets and submit them to Russell, and Russell was going to critique them. We kind of have a little back and forth thing going on. I'd draw them, send it to him, he'd mark them up, tell me what I'm doing right, tell me what I'm doing wrong, mail them back to me, and have a little back and forth instruction thing going on. No promise of a job, but hey, I was cool with all this. I got to go in the tunnel, I got real Disney model sheets, I'm going home and I'm working with a real Disney artist. I wasn't kicked out totally, so I was okay with this, okay? So I go home, fly back to Massachusetts, and my schedule is I work at the bank during the daytime, come home, have my dinner, and then I start drawing till maybe 1, 2 in the morning every night. And that first week, I was so gung-ho, I was so excited. I did 100 drawings, and I mailed them in. And the second week, I did the same thing. I did another 100 drawings, and I mailed them in. Well, I got to the point where doing 100 drawings in 1 week was really a tough pace to maintain because it was virtually taking up every second of my spare time. But I didn't want to cut back because if I cut back, they're going to think I'm losing interest, okay? So I did that, and I mailed in 100 drawings a week, every single week for almost 2 years. And finally, at the end of 2 years, I just felt, you know, they're not going to hire me as long as I'm in Massachusetts. I need to be in Florida. So I walked into the bank one day and I quit. I was up for vice president. I had no promise of a job. They thought I was nuts. I didn't care, but I was at the point where I wanted a mouse on my paycheck. I didn't care if I was selling popcorn. So I packed up, cashed in my, see, I work for a bank, but I've never been a saver. I was great with other people's money, and my money, you know, I just blew it all the time. I still do, okay? And so I cashed in my pension, paid off all my bills, you know, all this kind of stuff. Moved down to Florida, and I figured what would happen was I'd get a job at Walt Disney World and continue to submit my drawings from down there. But what you don't realize, what I didn't realize was, I moved down to Florida in September. And you gotta remember, this was back in the late 70s, okay? Back then, Walt Disney World was the Magic Kingdom. That was it. There's no Epcot, no Animal Kingdom, no studios, no not all these hotels, no water park, you know, no DVC, none of that stuff. It was the Magic Kingdom, the Contemporary, and the Polynesian. Well, the golf resort, but nobody went there, okay? So what happened back then is they had definite busy periods and definite slow periods. It's not like it is now where it's like busy all the time. I mean, the summer was busy, the holidays was busy. I mean, when school was in, the place was dead, okay? And I got there in September, which was right after the summer season. And not only were they not hiring, they were actually cutting people's hours back, okay? So I went and I saw this interviewer guy over in their casting office, and I told him my whole situation. I was working with the art department, but I wasn't looking for a job in the art department. I just wanted a job doing anything in the Magic Kingdom or in one of the hotels, or they had a small version of downtown Disney called Lake Buena Vista, just the marketplace, a few little shops. It was cute. It was nice back then. Anyways, but again, you know, he told me he had no openings whatsoever. So I went back and saw him daily for about almost 3 months. And he kept telling me he had no positions open, no positions open. And it got to the point where I was running out of money. This is ridiculous. I've never in my whole life gone this long without a job. I need a job. Now, I could have went to the Sun Trust and got a job in a heartbeat with my banking experience, but I wasn't about to give up everything I had in Massachusetts and get stuck in another bank. I just absolutely refused to do that. So I figured if I can't get a job at Disney, maybe I can get a job at least on Disney property. And if you're familiar with downtown Disney, as you drive in, it's Hotel Plaza Boulevard. It's got all those non-Disney hotels, but you know, like the Hilton and the Holiday Inn, they're on Disney property, but they're not Disney hotels. I figured at least I'll get a job on Disney property. So I got a job in the very last hotel before you enter the Disney, before you enter downtown Disney. It's changed its names a bunch of times. I'm not sure what it is now. Is it the Sun Regal still? It used to be the Grosvenor. Well, back then, it used to be the Dutch Inn, okay? It's the last hotel on the right, just before you get to the entrance of downtown Disney. If you take a right, you're heading towards Disney Vacation Club, you know, Saratoga Springs. There's that Inn hotel there. It used to be called the Dutch Inn. And I got a job in their dining room, their Flying Dutchman dining room, as a seating host and cashier, okay? And now the whole time I'm doing all this, I'm still doing my 100 drawings a week, okay? And submitting them. So what happened was, I went in there and I started working in the hotel, and I did that for a period of about 2 weeks. And I got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore, because what happened was, if you worked for Disney, if you were a Disney employee or a Disney cast member, as we call them, and you came into that restaurant for lunch, we gave you 25% discount off the lunch because you worked for Disney. So I'm there working the register, and I got customer after customer flashing an ID at me to get the 25% discount. And it got to the point after 2 weeks where it just drove me crazy. How come these people can have a Disney ID and I can't. What have they got that I haven't got, okay? It took me like 2 weeks and I just quit. And I went right from there and I went right back to the interviewer I've been seeing for the last 3 months, and I said, look it, I've been coming here for 3 months now and you keep telling me you have no positions open. You can't tell me in 3 months' time that somebody hasn't quit or gotten fired or retired or dropped dead or something. You're gonna have one opening. I don't care what it is. And he says to me, oh, okay, let me see what I got. So he goes in the back room and he has to talk to this manager. It's almost like a used car salesman. He'll go back and make a deal for me, okay? And he comes out and he says, I got 2 positions open. One is graveyard custodial at Lake Buena Vista, downtown Disney. I said, I'll take it. He said, well, you know, I should at least tell you about the other one anyways. And the other one is doing portraits of guests in the park. And I said, well, why can't I do that? This guy knew I was working with the art department. He said, well, you gotta have a special talent to do that, and you have to be hired by the guy in charge of all the portrait artists who works out of the art department. So the guy in charge of all the portrait artists works in the same art department that I'm trying to get into, okay? But he doesn't do this stuff. He's in charge of the artists up in the park, okay? And I said, well, can you get me an interview with this guy? Well, it might take us a couple of days. I said, fine, I'll get back to you. So I leave his office, I go out to the lobby, go to the payphone, no cell phones back then, okay? Go to the payphone, and I call up Russell. Russell is the guy I've been sending my drawings to for the last 2 years. And I said, Russell, do you know this guy that's in charge of the portrait artists up in the park? He said, you mean Sam? I said, yeah, I guess his name is Sam. Do you know him? Oh yeah, he works in the office right next door to me. I said, well, do you think you could ask him if he could see me like this afternoon or tomorrow? And Russell said, well, wait a minute. And I hear Russell say, hey Sam, can you see this guy tomorrow? And Sam said, okay. So I had my interview, okay? So I went the next day. They got me a pass to go down into the tunnel because the art department was underground. And I went and I met with this guy, Sam, and we hit it off perfectly, because I got to tell you this, I'm not making this up. Everybody thinks I'm making this up. I'm not making this up. Before Sam came to Disney, he was a bank manager in Connecticut for 10 years. So we clicked just like that, okay? Anyway, long story short, I know, too late. Long story short, he hired me, okay? And so I was going to go out into the park and do portraits of guests. So there's a trick to it. So I was going to get like a 3-day training period, okay? And what we used to do, we used to go Tomorrowland Terrace. I still call this stuff by their old names. I think it's, what's the big restaurant in Tomorrowland? What is it?
Cosmic Rays.
Cosmic Rays, yeah. It used to be Tomorrowland Terrace, okay? I still call everything by the old names. I'm old school. Anyways, above that, there's an attic above that restaurant. And so up in the attic, Sam would set up an easel, and we'd bring up the serving people up one at a time. We'd set them down and we'd practice on them, okay? Because this was not making you into a cartoon. This was a realistic, full-colored pastel portrait, but profile, okay? The guests would sit in their profile, and you would draw them and you'd shade them in real nice and all this kind of stuff. And there was a trick to it, because you take your chalk and you just kind of with your eye follow the forehead, the nose, the lips, the chin, and you kind of do it with your chalk as you followed it with your eye. If you got that one line right, you got the whole likeness. Everything else was just frosting on the cake, okay? So what happened was, I trained for 3 days, then they threw me out into the park. And it was all about volume, because what happened was they used to charge $4 a portrait for the guests. And what happened, the way you got paid was Disney got $3 and the artist got $1, okay? So the more portraits you did, the more money you made, obviously. So it was all about volume. And I did that for a period of about 6 weeks. And all of a sudden I went in one day and they told me that Disney has decided to close down the portrait artist and make it an orange juice bar, okay? I always tell people it took me 6 weeks to turn to close the whole area down. But, they promised all the artists jobs, not necessarily an art job, but a job. It was great when I was doing that for 6 weeks because my boss worked in the art department. So anytime I needed my boss, I got to go in the art department. Plus, I was a cast member now, so when I did my 100 drawings, I could hand deliver them to Russell. I could go down in the tunnel because I worked, you know, I had my name tag and everything, okay? And so it was good, but they promised us still jobs. So I wound up in the big gift shop. I think it was Star Traders now in Tomorrowland. It used to be Mickey's Mart in Tomorrowland. Now I think it's Mickey's Star Traders. Big gift shop. So I wound up, again, punching the cash register and stuffing t-shirts on the shelves and stuff like that, okay? So, but I was still working for Disney, so I could still go and hand deliver my artwork to Russell. And I was doing that for several weeks, and finally I went in one day, and there was a memo left at my location that the art department wanted to see me at the end of my shift. So what happened was, you know, I had worked with Ralph Kent, you know, who initially got me the model sheets, and he was a vice president. He's busy, you can't get in touch with him too much. And I was working basically with Russell. But Russell was like me, he's just an artist, he's great, but he couldn't hire me. You know, he's not in a position to hire anybody. But there was a person I didn't know about in this mix, a guy by the name of Craig, who managed the art department, okay? And back then, like I said, they had 15, 16 artists. And this guy, Craig, the manager, went to Russell, because he was his top guy, and said to Russell he wanted to increase his character artist staff a little bit. He was going to start interviewing people, and he wanted, since Russell was their top guy, he wanted Russell in on the interviews. And Russell said, well, as long as you're going to be interviewing guys, why don't you take a look at this guy who's working up in the park. He's been sending me drawings, okay? So Craig says, well, let me see what he's been sending me. So Russell literally dragged in boxes and boxes of drawings into this guy's office, because if you do the math, 100 drawings a week by almost 2 years, comes out almost to 10,000 drawings, okay? And so that's when I got a memo saying they wanted to see me at the end of my shift, okay? So at the end of my shift, I went down to the art department, and I met this Craig guy. And the way it was put to me, they were going to bring me in kind of on loan from Tomorrowland, Star Traders, or whatever the shop was. And the way it was put to me, I was going to be there for 30 days. And at the end of 30 days, if I did well, and they could swing an opening, they would keep me. And at the end of 30 days, if I did well, but they couldn't swing an opening right away, at least they knew where to get me when they could swing an opening, okay? And of course, at the end of 30 days, if I did not do well, then I'm punching the cash register for the rest of my natural life, okay? So me being the type of person I am, big worrier, I'm worried what's going to happen in 30 days, you know? And I go in there each day. The first week, they have me working with Russell and a few others, and I'm doing nothing but drawing Mickey Mouse. Every possible expression, pose, front view, back view, side views, upside down, running, whatever. Drawing Mickey, 8 hours a day for the entire week. The second week I go in and I start the same thing with the duck. I start drawing every possible view and pose of Donald and so on and so forth. The third week they had me start on Goofy, and about the middle of the third week they came to me and they gave me an actual real project to work on. I figured this is a good sign. They're not going to get rid of me if they're going to give me a real project to work on. That must be a good sign. Plus it was a very elaborate problem. It had like 3 major paintings connected to it. There's no way I could finish this in the length of time I had left. Okay, they must be going to keep me, all right? So anyways, I was working on that project when the 30th day rolls around. And I go into work and I'm all pins and needles, I'm all nervous. They're going to keep me, they're going to send me back to the park, what are they going to do? And I'm waiting all day for somebody to come up to me and say something to me one way or the other. And before you know it, 5:30 rolls around, everybody's gone. Nobody said anything to me one way or the other. I figured, well, I'll just keep coming back until they tell me not to. That was 31 years ago, and I'm still going back. And I've never come up to me and tell me I'm coming at the front. Basically, that's how I got started at Walt Disney World, okay? It's funny too, because I've done in the past, they used to send me out on the road to do interviews and stuff like that, promotion and stuff like that. And I travel around the country, and I go to this radio station, and I'm having a 4-minute interview. And the first thing the guy asked me was, how'd you get started at Walt Disney? I was like, oh, well, I submitted a lot of drawings, and eventually they hired me. You know, I mean, because it is pretty involved. But another thing I'd like to make a point of, it was real crazy when I first started. When I was in there that first week, drawing Mickey, everybody has, you know, and you're probably kind of confused why I'm the only one now, and I used to have 15, 16 guys. Well, over the years, people would quit, or they retired, or we lost a few when they did the MGM studios, Disney Hollywood studios, and they had the animation department over there. A number of our guys went over there into animation. I mean, over the years, as people left, Disney simply didn't replace them. And as the department dwindled and dwindled and dwindled, I remember when it finally happened, we were down to about 6 artists. And we went from 6 artists down to me, like in 3 months. I was really kind of freaked out because I thought, you know, what's happening? Is our department going away or what, you know? And but what happened was we started getting the work in and everything, and I was handling it, and it's been just me now for about 18 years. So, but anyways, that first week when I was in on my trial basis, they had me working with 2 artists. They had me working with Russell, and they had me working with this other guy, Harry Gladstone, who was leaving. And that's how I found out later on that my position took his place, because he was moving up to our New York office to manage the marketing up in New York, or be the artist up there. So they were going to have an opening. But that first week they had me working with this guy, with Russell, and this guy, Harry. Now Russell and Harry, they both do 2 distinct different types of Mickeys. Russell, I mean, even though Mickey looks the same to everybody else, I can look at a Mickey and tell you who did it, okay? I can look at a film from the 40s and tell you which animated which scene, because we're just that close to it. But Russell did this really cute, youthful, round Mickey, round snout, round eyes, where Harry did a more mature-looking Mickey. His snout was longer, sometimes even a double wrinkle, more narrow eyes, just a totally different. Oh, you would look at it and you'd say it's Mickey, okay? But anyways, I'm drawing Mickey there, and Russell would come over and he'd put a tissue over it and say, no, do it this way. Draw a nice round head, nice round eyes, nice round snout and everything. So I do that. And then Harry would come by and say, no, you don't want to do it that way. You want to make the snout like this and make the eyes like this. Okay, so I started doing it that way. And the next thing I know, Russell comes back and he said, what are you doing? I told you to do it this way. And this went back and forth for about a week, and I got to the point where I thought, well, you know, maybe I'm over my head here. Until we finally got it straightened out where I got to work with just 1 artist. But anyways, I'm babbling on here, Darren, and we got to get out of this theater at a certain point in time.
We're pretty much running out of time.
Yeah, so we're going to do this raffle here, okay? Let me see how many we got to give away. I did some drawing before you folks got here, so we'd have more to give away. We're going to start, we'll just do a quick count here. Let me get this out of my way here. Okay, we got 1, we got Ariel. 2, we got Lady. 3, we got Tramp. 4, we got Lilo. 5, Stitch. 6, Pinocchio. 7, Robin Hood. 8, Simba. 9, Timon. 10, Cinderella. 11, Jiminy Cricket. 12, Baloo. 13, Donald. 14, Sorcerer Mickey. 15, Winnie the Pooh. 16, Goofy. 17, Minnie. 18, Tigger. 19, Pluto. 20, Dopey. 21, Daisy, I think. Yep, 21, Daisy. 22, Hook. And 23, Dumbo, I believe. 23. We got 23 to give away.
Fantastic.
What about getting it?
And they're like,
Sir, is this your...
yeah, huge.
And if you stop by Wednesday, it's these type of people. I believe this.
Well, that's what I always try to play. I always try to get the last numbered one, too.